The public imagination is fixated on the kinetic. Hypersonic missiles, carrier groups maneuvering through the Taiwan Strait, the daily attrition reports from the Russia-Ukraine war. This is a deliberate distraction. The calculus of peer conflict is no longer about trading salvos. It is about inducing systemic paralysis. The primary vector of attack is not noise, it is silence. According to analysts at RUSI, the global financial system runs on a network of approximately 550 undersea fiber optic cables. This is the central nervous system of a $7 quadrillion derivatives market. It is also the system's most profound liability. Severing a handful of these nodes does not simply slow the internet. It freezes the flow of liquidity. It stops the signal. It triggers a global launch-on-warning protocol for every high-frequency trading algorithm on the planet, creating a solvency crisis in microseconds. Simultaneously, as documented by CSIS, orbital warfare protocols are designed to blind the adversary's satellites. The result is the blind Leviathan, a superpower with unmatched kinetic force. But its financial and military nervous system has been severed. It is a strategic entity rendered comatose, its strength inverted into a catastrophic liability. An adversary does not need to defeat the Leviathan. It only needs to make it blind, deaf, and broke. At that point, the system consumes itself. The motive is not conquest, it is survival. When a state is backed into a corner by superior conventional force, it faces an existential solvency crisis. The state itself becomes the primary liability on a mathematical path to failure. Its ability to project power externally is gone. Its only remaining objective is to prevent internal collapse. This pressure vector is amplified by domestic liabilities. A protracted, unpopular war drains political capital faster than Treasury reserves. CSIS analysis confirms this protocol in the Ukraine conflict. The immense cost and duration became a direct threat to domestic stability within Russia. An unpopular war is a balance sheet crisis for the regime. This is the inflection point. Faced with checkmate on the conventional board and political insolvency at home, weakness forces a pivot. The only rational strategic response is to abandon the symmetric game and attack the system itself. They cannot defeat the adversary's army, so they must target the adversary's source of power, its financial architecture. The adversary shifts from kinetic warfare to systemic warfare. The new target is the core liability of the dominant power, its globally integrated, dollar-denominated financial network. As outlined in reports from Banking News, this is perceived as the system's center of gravity. For the cornered state, initiating an attack on this architecture is not aggression. It is a defensive launch-on-warning protocol against their own collapse. The objective is to export their solvency crisis to the system that created it. By turning a regional conflict, whether in Ukraine or a future Taiwan Strait crisis, into a vector for systemic financial decay, they invert the power dynamic. The kinetic cost of applying conventional pressure becomes the direct accelerant for a liquidity crisis. This isn't a theory. It's a blueprint for leveraging weakness into a weapon. The central equation of modern conflict is no longer a balance of conventional force, but one of asymmetric economics. According to analysis from the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, the kinetic cost exchange is now terminally inverted. A $5 million main battle tank can be neutralized by a $500 FPV drone. This is a 10,000 to 1 cost disparity. This phenomenon is termed the democratization of violence. The barrier to entry for delivering lethal standoff force has collapsed. It no longer requires a state-level industrial base. It requires commercially available technology. Every application of expensive legacy military hardware against cheap, disposable systems is not a show of strength. It is a massive, self-inflicted financial hemorrhage, accelerating the aggressor's own journey towards a national solvency crisis. The adversary is not just attriting your military. They are bankrupting your treasury one drone at a time. This is a mathematical certainty. The protocol of asymmetric escalation is not random. It requires a staging ground, a laboratory to weaponize instability. These are the gray zones. They are not the core conflict. They are the controlled environments where the financial attack vectors targeting the US dollar are tested, refined, and perfected. While legacy media points to chaos, analysts at RUSI identify a blueprint. Examine the data points. Reports on the Russia-Ukraine conflict detail the West's use of financial sanctions. Simultaneously, documents from BRICS summits explicitly detail a strategy to de-dollarize. According to Banking News, this is not a defensive measure. It is a direct assault on the empire of chaos. This creates a zero-sum game. Every sanction applied becomes a data point for the adversary, teaching them precisely where the systemic liabilities are. These gray zones function as proxy laboratories. The Taiwan Strait crisis, as detailed by Deshkal News, is not merely a regional challenge. It is a live fire test of economic coercion and naval blockade theory. It measures the kinetic cost of intervention versus the speed of capital flight from regional markets. Internal warnings of instability in Western-aligned nations, such as South Africa's resource nationalization debates or Canada's supply chain vulnerabilities, are not the cause of systemic risk. They are symptoms, probes to measure the response time and political fragility of the dominant powers network. The mechanism is mathematical. As the historian Adam Tooze observes, we live in an age of overlapping crises. Adversaries leverage these gray zones to stack asymmetric costs against the core power. They don't need to win a conventional war. They only need to make the cost of defending the global financial architecture higher than the system's ability to pay. Each proxy conflict is an accelerant burning through liquidity until a systemic solvency crisis becomes a mathematical certainty. At that point, the kinetic cost becomes the only variable left to deploy. Launch on warning is not a policy of aggression. It is a survival protocol designed to counter a decapitation strike. The logic is brutal. Upon detection of an inbound nuclear attack, retaliatory forces are launched before the incoming warheads can destroy command and control. This compresses the decision timeline from hours to minutes, creating a permanent hair trigger posture predicated entirely on the integrity of early warning data. This is where an adversary leverages asymmetric escalation. They do not need nuclear parity. They only need to inject ambiguity with a cyber attack. Analysts at CSIS define this state as the fog of digital war. For the commander, the protocol becomes a trap. Is the radar blind due to a system glitch, or is it the precursor to impact? Waiting for confirmation risks annihilation. Launching guarantees a kinetic exchange. The defender's own doctrine is weaponized against them. A systemic liability forcing a solvency crisis at the highest possible level. The final stage of asymmetric escalation is not kinetic. It is a test of thresholds. Before a solvency crisis is triggered, the adversary must demonstrate capability. This is not an act of war. It is a signal, a calibration shot to prove they can reach inside the opponent's financial architecture and disconnect it without leaving a state-level fingerprint. CSIS reports confirm that protocols for such attacks are no longer theoretical. They are a standard component of gray zone competition between major powers, from the Taiwan Strait to Eastern Europe. While legacy media focuses on kinetic events, as documented by Al Jazeera, the real battlefield is the systemic plumbing of the dollar system. The strategy, according to analysts tracking the BRICS financial architecture, is not to replace the dollar, but to hold its core liabilities hostage. This creates leverage. The calibration shot serves to prove this leverage exists, introducing a new, unquantifiable risk premium into the dominant power's cost of capital. Therefore, the next vector is a mathematical certainty. Within 12 months, expect a targeted 24 to 48-hour disruption of a major Western Automated Clearinghouse, ACH, or a key data center hub like those in Ashburn, Virginia. The event will be attribution impossible, publicly blamed on a cascading software update failure or a sophisticated ransomware attack. The objective is not destruction, but a liquidity seizure, a sufficient volume of failed-to-settle transactions to force an emergency central bank intervention. It is a warning. The next time, it will not be a test.